What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In the last episode, you saw us get the frame rails on the Continental all buttoned up, as well as get that Godzilla motor mounted. We still have a couple things we're waiting for so we could finish all that up, like the oil pan. So while we're waiting, we're gonna jump over to the back section. We're gonna be getting our 4 9-inch put in, as well as our 4-link from BC Fab, and we're gonna get those Ridetech air shocks put in. So before we do that, we gotta get all this old crusty stuff out, so let's get to work.
We got the body up onto blocks so we get tall enough to get our wheels out. We took the wheels off, we took the airbags off, and that dropped our suspension, so we have it supported on this platform with a jack. Coming back under here, we took our shocks, which were disintegrating anyway, off of the rear end. And on this side, we actually did the top plate, so it's just our shocks hanging right here. So our next step is going to be taking them off. This one here is not even tight. Somebody already loosened it for us. So we got our whole rear assembly down, laying on our platform here. Just disconnected our hydraulic brake line. Khalil's working on disconnecting the e-brake system over here. And once that's disconnected from our rear, everything will be detached that ran between the body and the rear end.
So we finally got all of our parts to continue on the Continental suspension. Here laid out on the table is our 4-link kit. This is an air ride 4-link kit from BC Fab. Check them out online. They got direct fit kits for 4-links for all the Continental years. We also have our 9-inch rim from Quick Performance, which we're gonna need that. Got all of our hardware, bushings, everything that we're gonna need to get this job done. We got our axle brackets, our uppers, our lowers, our link bars. These come equipped for airbags, so we're probably obviously gonna modify that. So we're not using airbags per se, we're using our air shocks from Ridetech. So got everything we need. Now unfortunately, like a lot of stuff around here, this car has been previously modified. As you guys know, we took out all that kind of home built stuff, and now we're gonna have to get the rest of it out. So like these plates up here that have been welded in need to be cut out. So let's get to work. So this really sucks. From now on, when someone brings in an already modified car, I'm gonna charge them triple. Trying to get all these welds out of here and without getting a bunch of hot molten metal in your face is kind of hard, so wish me luck. So after about 2 hours of grinding and cutting and prying, I got both brackets off. That was miserable, but we got it. So now I gotta clean up some of these welds that are still on the frame here. We got rid of that big bracket that was up there. Got our frame rails cleaned up here. This is where we're gonna be mounting our cross member. Also, we have our old 4-link mounts off, which I believe this is where we're gonna be mounting our lower bracket here. I still have to remove this tab, and we're gonna be cutting 1.5 inches off of this old bump stop. So 1.5 inches so that our bar could slip up as high as it can. I think it's basically gonna be resting right around this area right here. So just gotta get a grinder, get this off, cut my little axis here, and we should be ready to slide this puppy in place. All right, so we got everything cut out of the way. The bracket is now sitting where it needs to be. Our 1/4" hole here is gonna line up with the one on the bracket itself. I'm probably gonna just get like a self-tapper or something to temporarily hold it so I could go ahead and mark my other 3 holes that I have to drill through the frame rail. This gets through bolted. I'm also gonna clean up some of these jagged edges on some of the stuff I cut. Put it up in there, we'll drill our holes, get it bolted in. Then we'll be able to mock up our top link bars, and we're gonna have to get the rear end set in here so we can mount our brackets onto that. So let's keep it moving. All right, so we got this cross member up in here. I got a couple bolts fastened on this side. It's pulled tight to this side. Now this side I have a pretty good gap. The hardware that is provided wasn't long enough, so I sent Khalil to get some new hardware. Meanwhile, we're gonna go ahead and get on to the next step, the lower arm bracket. These are getting mounted right into the location where the leaf spring brackets were. Got this all cleaned up and we're ready to go. All right, so now that we got our brackets mocked up in there, it's time to slide our 9" rear end housing in place because we need to get these brackets welded on. So we're gonna get this all in place, mock up our bars, set our brackets onto our rear end, get all these tacked up, and then we'll be pulling it back out to final weld. So we're gonna slide it in and see how she looks. Come on, Andrew, you ready? Oh, he ready. He got our jack stands in there. American lifting. All right, there she is. She's mocked up in there. We got her held by a little duct tape. So Andrew is gonna help me get these arms in place.
So we're setting up the BC Fab triangulated 4-link, and we're going to need to center our axle inside the frame rails of the car. To get an accurate measurement, what we're gonna do is measure the total length of our axle tube housing. This is actually a narrowed axle housing compared to what comes standard in the 65 Lincoln by about, I think 2 inches to give us a little bit more clearance for a larger wheel. So while Mikey's ascending into the jungle gym, he's gonna get a center line mark for us. So we're gonna measure between our frame rails, find our halfway mark, make a mark there, and we're probably gonna hang a plumb bob from the dead center of our body. And then we're gonna make a mark on our axle housing right in the center, and we'll line those up, and that's how we're gonna center our axle inside of the frame rails.
All right, so here's another problem that we are gonna have to overcome. These brackets are made for a stock Lincoln rear end. So this section over here with this flat tab that comes down, this is supposed to sit on top of the pad, which would be for your 4-leaf on your stock rear end. This is not a stock rear end. This is our Quick Performance 4 9". So there's no pad. There's nowhere to weld that second tab onto. So we are going to have to modify this as well and add another point to weld this bracket onto.
Got the axle housing centered inside the chassis frame rails. We're also locating our pinion angle with our angle gauge mounted right here on the face for our third member. So we have a nice flat area to take a measurement for pinion angle, and our base measurement for our left to right upper control arms for our 4-link are lengthened out to the same exact length, and the same thing with our lower arms. We are going to put our pinion angle up 3 degrees. Mikey's gonna tack in our brackets for our upper control arms.
All right, we got our lower tabs and our upper tabs for our link bars tacked on to our rear end. Now we're gonna pull this thing back out so that way I can get some welds on it, and then we'll slide it back in. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and leave the hardware in the top mounts. That way when we weld them, these tabs don't tend to shrink on us, and then we'll have a hard time getting that stuff in there. Also slipped in a little piece of pipe in here to keep these brackets from doing the same. Got everything tightened up, so we're ready to go.
All right, so we've got all of our links and bracketry for our triangulated 4-link. So you can see our lower arm and our upper arms. The lowers have bag mounts on them. And as you can see, this crossbar that holds the control arms for the top also has the bracket for the bag mount. Originally, we've showed you previously that we were gonna be using a air shock combo, but we had talked to the people at Ridetech, and they informed us that what we were using was not gonna be enough support for what we're gonna be doing with the car. Basically, too much weight is gonna be in the back of the vehicle, and that their shock assembly is not meant for that load rating. So what we're gonna do is change to a bellow style airbag and a separate shock. We do have to still make some mounts for a shock, but we are going to put our bag in this area with the BC Fab kit. This is how it's originally intended. We're waiting on some shocks to show up for that, as well as a different set of bags. So what I mean by a bellow style bag is one that looks just like this. Originally, we were gonna be using a shock and airbag combination, just like this Ridetech Shockwave that we have here, which we're actually gonna be using in the front of the vehicle. They're super simple to bolt in. Here they have mounting brackets. This is the lower bracket that goes on the lower control arm, and this is the top plate to go onto the coil spring bucket that exists on the car. So while we're waiting for all those parts for the rear, I'm going to continue to move to the front and get these shockwaves installed in the front of the Crown Vic crossmember. I've got our Shockwave air shocks installed. It's going to give us a better view of the overall suspension setup. We still have a lot more work to do. We still have to get some upper control arms because we need something that's an adjustable length arm, because we're going to need another, I'd say another 2 inches of upper arm length to help us with our camber gain as we lower the vehicle. So right now, once we put this car at ride height, we're probably at probably 3 degrees negative camber. So we're gonna have to get an arm that's gonna adjust and be able to have the hub stand up straighter so we can have a straighter alignment. We also still need to make a mount back here for our lower control arm to attach to the frame over here, as well as correcting our bump steer here. We're not at the ride height at the moment. We're probably 5 inches or so down right now at full droop. So what we'll be sitting probably up here, and what that does is it puts our tow rod at a pretty harsh angle upwards, which isn't good for bump steer, meaning any bump that you hit, the car will be gaining a lot of tow. We want it to be in a flatter place so it's a lot more neutral as you go over bumps, and the tow change is equal. We're just gonna add a bump steer kit, which is basically like a long stud with a different tie rod end, like a race style tie rod end, and then we'll be able to space the actual rod end down away from the knuckle, probably a good 2.5 inches or so, and that'll help us with our bump steer. While we're waiting on more parts, we're gonna move to the back. All right, so I finally got our rear airbags that we were waiting on. and I just pulled them out of the box and they gave me a surprise. As you can see here, they're fairly large. This is they're not all the way opened up, but yeah, there we go. This is what the extended bag would end up looking like, and that's pretty tall. We have 11 inches here. Just right off rip, I could tell they're not gonna work out. The space that we are allotted here, as you can see, this bag ain't gonna cut it. So even when we compress it down to its lowest, there's no way that this bag can do that. You see how the bag is folding over on itself? So it'll never allow itself to get this low. Right. So we could shove it in there, of course, but you see that our problem here with the bag folding over onto everything, it could potentially pinch when you lower the car, because there is an aluminum plate right here on the interior of the bag, and if it goes too low, it could end up pinching. So this is no longer gonna work for us. We have some different bags that were here that were off a different project that we can use for a reference for height. So this is gonna be more of the style of bag that we're gonna need. As you can see here, the overall height of this is just over 6.5 inches, and it fits into here just right. So obviously when this thing's aired up, it's gonna extend more. This is just at its resting state, and also it can compress a little bit more from where it's at now also. So something like this is gonna be a lot better for what we're doing. To be 100% sure, we have to make sure, articulate our axle all the way up into the chassis. At this point, with the larger axle housing, we can no longer do that because the rear of the differential is hitting our fuel tank. So we're gonna have to drain the fuel, remove our fuel tank, and then we'll be able to articulate our rear end all the way up, and then we can get our proper measurement of exactly what this is gonna be. Like I said, this isn't the exact bag. This is just very similar to what we're gonna end up having to use. I'm just using it as a visual reference. You can see the other one over there as well. So once we get that all squared away, we can finish off our suspension. So that's it for this episode. We're done with the fabrication and the installation of the 4-link. We're gonna get our center section for the differential installed along with the axles and our wheels mounted up so we can get a true sense of the travel that we have. I don't think we're gonna have to make any changes to the wheel well because I think we're all good there. But the more we have on, the more that we know. So that's it for this episode. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment on all of the stuff that we got going on in the shop. Until next time, see ya.